Yes, welcome to today's self talk. So on our self cast podcast self cast. This one is podcast one cast self cast. Yeah. Anyway, welcome. Thank you very much for joining me today. I'm looking at the topic as from yesterday GLP and trying to understand this whole thing with the Ozempic, the semaglutides and how they operate. Of course, I am. First of all, I'm not giving medical advice. I'm just talking to myself. Um, Digging deep into the research, of course, that I'm doing is around the liver and insulin resistance. Trying to learn as much as I could from the various guys who have done so much work in the area. People like Ben Beckman and Robert Ludwig and many others. From researching papers, but those are prominent persons you would find on the YouTube speaking about our pattern of life and how we have done whatsoever we have done with it, and how these have just been the impact of the pattern of life. And it seems like a bridge between is that thing that is created, that peptide that is created that we call insulin, which has the role largely of doing glucose control, taking glucose from the blood and bringing it into certain parts of the body. I don't know. I also follow Dr. Rob Sivers, which is the carb addiction doctor. He has done a lot of work on the liver, so he does have a little piece on insulin that you need to, speak about, listen about. And in all the discovery, the best place to be is where I am right now, state of confusion. So when you're in a state of confusion, meaning that you're in a state of the unknown, it is the best opportunity. In fact, let's replace the word confusion with the word unknown. When you're in the unknown, that is where you get to create and that's where you get to understand and discover, and all the beautiful creation possibilities exist in that state. So I am beautiful in this place, in the state of unknown, and hence my self-cast today. I'm asking for whoever has better literature to help me get. Remember, I am a patient understanding, and I need to translate that into computer language so that I could target my audience with the analogies of how the computer works and how the body works, and how insulin comes from wherever the beta cells of the pancreas and what it is doing, so forth and so on. I don't think that happens in our computers because computers are fully electrical, whereas the body is chemical and insulin is a chemical. What I know about insulin from my reading is, from my main study is upon the amino acids. If you don't have an amino acid, at the end of the day, you need amino acids to make insulin. Insulin is a chain of amino acids called a peptide, and so the same with glucagon. They are all peptides which come from amino acids. So the lack of intake of adequate amount of amino acids through your dietary protein sources leads you to having lower levels or the lower capacity levels to produce insulin. And I want to get that clear because persons on the side where I was from, this vegetarian side, who do not look at the adequate intake of dietary protein and the adequate transfer of dietary food protein into molecular amino acids, which is called the digestive process. That is where things gets messed up in our stomach, because when you are on the plant-based type diet and you are not conscientious about the acidity of the stomach, you go to the point where you are eating a lot of carbohydrates, which does not demand the body to create such great acid levels in the stomach. The cells of the stomach, I can't remember the name. They are supposed to be pouring out acid consistently, but they wouldn't do much of that after the time 10-15 years. They start taming down largely because the to make that you need protein, you need good amino acids. To create that, you need what is called the epigenetic environment, which means you have to stimulate for protein to actually create. So in your stomach, if you are putting in what I consider to be things that do not demand a strong acidic substance to do what acidic substance do, whether it is to purify through the sterilization of the food process, or to decompose the nature, the protein, because it's not meat-based protein or it's those refined kind of foods, then you don't need that high amount of acids or that long-lasting effect of the stomach acid And over time, the epigenetic environment of the stomach loses its control of creating what is called proper high dose, high amount of acidity in the stomach. Hence, we would have start listening to persons who would speak about getting some apple cider vinegar in the morning to help stimulate. Really and truly, it's not helping to stimulate. I don't believe that is what's happening. It's just that we are adding acids there, which is natural and good. Lime, lemon, very acidic substances. Put it in the stomach to support the acidity levels. And we learn this so way after we would have gone through that process. And then what we don't do, we don't go and look at the root cause, which is you would be adding acid to your stomach with biotin, HCI, and pepsin, which is great. I use it myself. You would add it with lime and lemon, which is great. They are natural products. They would help you do what they have to do. Ginger, um, whatever else, apple cider vinegar, vinegars of great sorts. You do little bits to help stimulate the acidity of the stomach. And what happens after? If you do not look at your intake of your amino acids or your protein, your dietary protein, then you continue into that vicious cycle of just adding in and adding in or supplementing. And you look at supplement from a holistic point of view. Supplement was always there. Supplement in the pharmaceutical mode is not something to run away from. It's just a increase in what we've been doing for the last maybe 6,000 years. We've been always supplementing with certain things to assist our bodies in its better functions. So we supplement with the plants like lime, apple cider vinegar, lemon juice. We are supplementing the stomach acidity level so that it could perform its function that it needs to perform. But we need to understand that we are supplementing it to do the digestion of proteins, dietary protein like meat and legumes and those things properly so that they could adequately bust open the nutrients and they could extract the amino acids, the peptide chain, so that pepsin could come in and cut out the amino acids and release these amino acids later on down in the small intestine to be absorbed into the bloodstream up into the liver. Now that doesn't happen too much with carbs. Carbs is just a open store. If not for the fiber, carbs could just run from your mouth into your liver, as far as I'm concerned. But thank God for fiber. That's why fruits are one of the great things. It is fructose, glucose, and fiber. A fruit is fiber with fructose, glucose, and it is bonded so well that you eat this, and the fiber holds on to the sugars and release them gently across the barrier of the gut. This is great. This is great. That is why we need to eat our fruit in its holistic form and not to just, well, blending is fine because you would not be straining out the fiber, but juicing, that juicing principle we need to twist and turn about. Now, if you're juicing, what you want to do is put lime or lemon in that juice. What it would do is also go in there and slow down or inhibit the process of the carb being absorbed, because the lime somehow has this, I don't know if it's creating the GLP-1 effect in the body to pull to signal to the pathway of insulin to really capture the sugars. Or in my case, I think the GL is just opening a lot of nutrients to go across with the sugars, whatever it's doing, but it has this effect of not giving you that heavy spike of glucose from your intestine across into, put it so please, across into the hepatic vein up to the liver. So this whole GLP-1 glucagon like peptide, which is key to us understanding and key to the discovery of this whole Ozempic and key to the discovery of how this could help us or how this could be manipulated not to help us. In our studies, we would have been looking at the action of this semaglutide, which is the general name for all of them, Ozempic being one, and then Wegovy being another, whatever these brands. But the semaglutide work by increasing insulin secretion. Now, I'm confused here once again. Suppressing glucagon release and slowing gastric emptying. So once I read these things, I need to figure out for myself the various parts and how the parts come together, or else it becomes what I say into the unknown, and that's where I would have to stop to do some more research or discovery. So the semaglutides are the GLP-1 antagonists. What they do, they seem to, I would want to reverse this sentence and say they don't stimulate the increase of the secretion of insulin, which is made in the beta cells, they seem to be um, inhibiting the release of glucagon. What does glucagon do? Glucagon is the brother to insulin, and his job is to go and undo everything insulin just did. So insulin is going about simply putting in allowing sugar molecules to enter cells. I don't know if it is in muscles. Apparently, it is mainly in the fat cells. It doesn't seem like if insulin is really pushing sugar into the muscle cells or the organ cells. Even the liver, insulin doesn't target the liver. I've been hearing that from a couple of well research guys, and they are saying insulin is not targeting the liver, and that makes sense. Insulin is not targeting the liver. The liver has its own mechanism of grabbing the amount of nutrients it needs, glucose, sorry, it needs, because the liver is the hardest working industrialized factory in the world. So the liver has to go there and pull all the energy it needs for itself. It cannot have somebody pushing energy to it, and what, that liver will become a problem. So the liver pulls the amount of energy it needs, and therefore it works with that energy. The muscle cells, apparently they could be the brain, sorry, is the second one that pulls as much as it needs, because the brain knows what it's doing, and the brain survives on these sugars, and so it pulls the sugars through that mechanism. Now, funny thing to note is there is no blood flowing to the brain itself. The blood is flowing around the brain to the latest capillary, and there is the blood brain barrier, just as the gut hepatic portal vein axis. There's always that space where the things jump across using some electromagnetic spectrum. It's the same mechanism that is used from a flower to a bee, that the bees don't go and just start on flower and they think, oh, it's get no. The bee is getting what it has to get from an electric charge that jumps from the flower to the bee, so the thing moves across. That is how the transmission of these things happen. Very microscopic, as we know, um, within the brain, within the gut, and the blood system. So the exchange of gases in the brain, the exchange of blood, well, not blood, gases and whatever else that has to go to the brain, the sugar molecules are moving through this fine thin veil, as we call it, between the brain and the blood. So the oxygen gas, they just go across this thin layer, boom, 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 boom. Whether it's oxygen to go to the brain, carbon dioxide to come out, it's not coming like blood flowing and in the other parts of the body. Blood flows through the muscles. Nah, it's totally different with the brain. And so the brain determines what it wants, and it will pull that amount of glucose into itself. The liver does the same thing, because these are the two most active parts of the human system at this point in time, and that is 24-hour activity for these two organs. These two organs are initially running functions that is consistently different, meaning that they rev up for energy, then they cool down. So it's like you having, let's say you have a battery in your house, and you have the battery running, let's say a standard appliance like a fan or a fridge. It's consistently pulling 210 watts, and then you come to put on an electric kettle, which would give it a spike. So you have this spike, and then you hear this fan turn on. That is how the brain and the liver works. Based on what's happening in the body at any point in time, the liver has to kick in to deal with that. Based on what's happening in the body at any point in time, the brain has to create this chemical, I guess, the chemical structure, and send that message down to the liver to help tell the liver, hey, this is what's happening, move through and do that. Of course, the brain is not functioning just to do that on its own, it's getting the signal from the heart. So the heart is also a 24-hour functioning organ, but the heart does not go out of place naturally, except you're in the flight mode, which is gonna be, you're anticipating a flight mode because of you're in a situation. But generally, you are in your place, blah 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 blah. Your heart doesn't just go jump and bump. Your heart doesn't do that. You are gonna stay there, and then you are gonna move from that point to the next point in your life, gently, graciously, cautiously, and that is how your heart works. But your heart is sending those signals up to the brain and say, okay, I am still in joy, I am still in peace, I am in healing, I am in recovery, I am in productivity, I am creation. And so those things goes up to the brain, and the brain is sending out signals to the rest of the body, mainly the liver, saying to the liver, create the joy chemical, create the happy hormone, and wherever these things are to be created, the liver may send out the signal for all the other things to come together and do that, or like different endocrine glands would happen to do what they have to do. Now, that is why it is important to understand the demand of most of our glucose is between the brain and the liver on their own. They do not need nobody outside to come in and say, hey, here is some sugar. Insulin don't have to offer the liver and the brain no sugar. That is not the way it is. Insulin goes around offering somebody else the sugars. The fat cells specifically seems to be the target for the insulin. Now, why I say the fat cell then? If it's not the fat cell, then why is the fat cell getting fat and why is the fat cell getting into the muscle? You know about cows that are eating all this glucose food. They call them now marble meat, where you're seeing all this fat within the meat. Why is that happening? Because glucose is not going to the muscle cell here, it's going to the muscle cell. But isn't it not being offered to the fat cells? Yes, it is. And when the fat cells get full, what happens to the rest of the glucose? Well, insulin start pounding the fat cells. They get what we call insulin resistant, and therefore new cells have to be created because they are getting insulin full. They are full with glucose, and so the insulin is still trying to force them to hold more glucose, and they become resistant. So the insulin moves along and say, "Where could I find all the fat cells?" And then the body now start responding and say, "There isn't enough space, so let's create," and they start eating up the muscles. Now, if insulin was pushing things into the muscles, I don't think we would have gotten so fat. If insulin was pushing blood glucose into the muscles, we may not get gotten so fast. We may have become ADHD type children and men and women would have become more active because any excessive glucose push it into the muscles, mitochondria jump up, start making energy. You would feel happy, peppy, and you would want to do things. That doesn't happen. So it seems like insulin is more focused on getting fat cells fatter than getting muscles more muscly. And that is why they say insulin is a growth hormone. It is a growth hormone because it is a horizontal hormone. It's causing you to get horizontally big, not the true growth. The true growth we look at is the growth upward towards the sun. We go up with growth, with true growth. When we are getting this big, this is growth too, but it's not the right growth. You are getting horizontally irregular, and that is not what we are expecting, and this is caused by insulin. When you have insulin resistance, of course they will check your waist, they'll tell you have big belly, belly falling over and those things. Why? It's horizontal growth. Horizontal growth is an indication of fat, and fat is an indication that insulin is, you have a lot of glucose, yes, loads of glucose coming into play here. Nobody's arguing, lots of glucose. But then what is happening? Insulin is doing the work. So so if insulin excuse me there, if insulin is doing the work of pushing all this glucose into the fat cells, what is really happening? There seems to be the muscles getting the saturation of glucose by themselves, and they are doing that very much on a small amount of glucose. It doesn't look like if the muscles demand so much glucose. And you know why? Because I'm sitting, I'm not running. When the muscles needs a lot of glucose, that means you are active, you are running, you are working out, you are doing these things. More muscles, more workout, more glucose you burn. Kind of understood by most people in the world, including myself. But when it comes to the point of you saying now, where is it that this, okay, let's go from the start. Liver, 20% of your glucose intake. Brain, 20% of your glucose intake. Muscles, 30% of your glucose intake. All the muscles in all the organs. You look up and you say 20, 20, 30. So that's 2, 4, and 3, 7. You have 30% of glucose, which is coming from your carbohydrate sources and your sugars and your refined foods and all these things. What is happening there now? Insulin comes up and say, whoa, I have 30% of a glucose, and that is per meal, and you are having 6 meals a day. Yeah, I know you might say you don't have 6 meals a day. Every time you open your mouth, it's a meal. A meal is once you open your mouth to chew. And so you bring that in. The muscle is already saying, I'm good, you're sitting, you don't need nothing. The muscles is good. The liver says, I'm good. The brain says, I'm good. And even though when they don't get anything coming from the hepatic portal vein, which connects to your between your small intestine to bring up the nutrients called glucose, fructose, galactose, fatty acids, and all the other nutrients, for example, the amino acids. That hepatic portal vein goes to the liver. Even when that hepatic portal vein becomes null and void in terms of supplying new nutrients to the liver to check it out and methylate it, even at that point in time, the liver says, we good. Because the liver has 3 day reserve, 2 or 3 days reserve of enough glucose to that glycogen around itself to supply to the brain. Its target is the brain, not your heart. So the glycogen here is for the liver itself and the brain. It's saying whenever we run into a problem, we'll dip into this glycogen, and you should run into that problem every 12 hours to dip into your glycogen, pull up your code to your brain, and so you function better. Your brain is more at ease, your body is more at ease, your heart sends signals, and you are calm. Now, this is where we sit today in the state of 2024 in most of us. This is not a West, this is not a USA problem, this is a worldwide problem. We consume the carbs 6 times a day because we are eating 3 snacks and three course meals. And each time we do that, we are pushing in glucose. Carbohydrates digest to glucose. Glucose moves from your gut into crosses the small the gut brain, the gut axis barrier into the hepatic bottles, goes up to the liver, and there the blood is taken. The glucose is taken from the blood by the liver for its own sake if it needs. And here is where the problem comes. The liver is always saying, I am supposed to have, but there is old stores there. So the liver is saying, let me just hold on to a little bit more. And then you start realizing fat cells are also developing around the liver because of the same practice. Where do I store when I do not have room to store more? I would make more room, which is called the storage mechanism, fat. And though those things start happening, the liver takes a little more, which it shouldn't do, but because it doesn't know what's going on, so it takes a little more. We have the situation now where insulin pushes against all the cells. We know that the cells do not want more glucose. They are full, they are zipped, they are locked. And so new cells, new fat cells has to be created to take in a new glucose. Your lifestyle don't change, and this continues as a vicious cycle. And then that vicious cycle with so many fat cells having so many other things apart from the glucose, including toxins, stays there and creates what we call an infestation, a manifestation of that tumoritic things and those kind of mutated things too from that level. We're talking about years, 2, 3 decades sometimes, because the mitochondria they don't function after a time. We'll get into that in that topic. So, what supposed to happen when you go to sleep in the night? You shouldn't have glucose coming in because you are not into activity. Therefore, this lesson is not about sleeping in the night. When you are inactive, you should not have glucose coming in from the gut to the hepatic portal vein because you are not active. And if you are not active, then the body has a regulatory function which should be to say, I need glucose. Why am I not getting glucose? And so the body will turn around and ask everybody to supply. Well, not the body, the brain tells everybody, find a way and supply me, the brain, with glucose. I need glucose. You guys are putting me in a critical situation. Liver responds first and say, remember, I have 2 days of glucose right here. Let me release it. Pancreas then responds to the liver and say, I will send you the key, which is called glucagon. Glucagon goes to the liver, unzips the fat around the liver that stores the glucose glycogen and reverse it and gets that back into glucose, pumps it into the blood, goes into the blood, insulin comes about, and whatever insulin has to do at this point in time does. its job, and so glucose goes up to the brain, and you have glucose in the body coming from stored glucose. Now, this process, if it continues, it is good. And that is when we come to the point where we understand that is what we call a fast. So when we go to sleep in the night, we go into our 12-hour fast. If we push this fast a little longer, then we deplete what is called the glycogen reserves or the glycogen stores. And these would remove all the glucagon or reverse this whole fatty liver. If we continue to do that year after year, day after day for a while, we reverse the fatty liver issues. We get that body back into that shape, and we start saying now the liver could move from glucose availability to no glucose availability with a switch and a flip of a switch behavior. We could retrain our bodies, and we could get our bodies to flip back to say nothing is coming from. When I say nothing, it doesn't mean amino acids is coming, fatty acids are coming, vitamins, minerals are coming in, but we are not getting glucose, meaning we have been very much on a low carb kind of situation here, or a high fiber, very trickling glucose. So let's assume when you eat something on normal plate, you get 10 million glucose molecules rushing through the liver. Now you're eating fibrous things like your broccoli, your cauliflower with your meat and your stuff like that, or you eat your beans and stuff, you would have like 10,000 glucose molecules going across. And then if you really go move down to like ketogenic style and you move to more carnivore for a short style, then you might have about 50 glucose molecules trickling across. Now, if you drink a soda, you could have 2 million thousand glucose molecules running across to the liver. If you drink a soda, but you put fiber, like you have chia, flaxseed, and thing, and you shake it up with that mix, and you drink it, or okra and those sticky, starchy, whole foods. Because of the fibrous compound, you might end up having 1.5 billion, million, or whatever rushing across because the starch holds them. If you eat a fruit, you think you have the same kind of effect. If you eat fats and protein before you consume this, you still even have a better effect because you're blocking the way for this rush of glucose to across into the body. So these are the little things that I'm picking up here from the study of the GLP-1s, semaglutides, Ozempic. What a useful topic it has been for me, because we know that we cannot get into Ozempic. From my point of view, I wouldn't get into Wegovy Ozempic. I can't afford it. First of all, it seems to have its benefits. It seems to have some little issues, but we know currently that there is good mechanism and good research around this, which is useful for us to understand how the body is functioning. And here comes Ozempic, which now helps create better stimulation of insulin. So Ozempic seems to be pointing, or the semaglutide seems to be pointing to the mechanism of action by creating the ability for the beta cells in the pancreas to create more insulin. And of course, insulin regulate more blood sugar, meaning it would have whatever the regulatory powers of the blood sugar better. I'm confused by this statement because if it is doing more insulin, more than likely, if it is doing more insulin and you are not active, it could be doing more storage of glucose. If your glucose is consistently incoming from your mouth. But what I have learned is that it also does the GLP-1 gives you the effect of feeling full longer and feeling full on a smaller meal. So it means that you are breaking from 6 meals now to about 3 or 4 meals, and then you might be breaking down even the size of the meal. So less glucose is being pumped through the mouth. So that's what I would have picked up from that. Now, this altogether says the semi-glutides also help in weight loss. What I cannot get is, what are you losing when you are on a semi-glutide? Are you losing your fat itself, your stored fat, or are you losing your muscles? Naturally, when we sit and think about the process that was explained in all the discussion prior to this one, is the idea that when you go on a hungry stomach, you do not put nothing that is carb into the stomach. So hungry stomach or empty stomach means protein is there, fats are there, fatty acids, vitamins, minerals are coming in, you're eating, you're consuming them, but no carbs. No carbs for a while. When you go to this state, it seems like there is no carbs, so there is the presence of protein. You stimulate, so you could you presence of protein mean presence of amino acids going through. You stimulate, amino acids are getting used. So you sit and you ask yourself, well, where does the fat, where does the loss, the whole weight loss come from? Is it from your stored fat being burned, or is it from your muscles being cannibalized to make glucose internally? We have to look at that very clearly, because the natural process should be glucose for energy first, fats for energy second, muscles for energy third. So you should not lose your muscles so fast. But now we know that is not true. We are seeing glucose, if it is coming in, we'll go for that first. Then after glucose, we go for protein. And then we go for fat. So it seems like when you do not have a good metabolic function from switching from the sugar regulator, which is insulin, to the sugar opener, which is glucagon, to open the condensed milk, the pans of sugar, and release it into the blood because it's already stored there. When they are not being able to flip, then we burn muscles in the interior. It's only when we reach a certain amount of muscle burning, a muscle degradation, a muscle cannibalism, atrophy of the muscle, that's when we literally jump across to or fat. So fat comes in last. So having this experience from using or not using, understanding or not understanding, playing around with Ozempic, seeing what Ozempic does in terms of, yes, quenches satiety, gives you satiety, quenches hunger, bring it to the state, and that is great. But what is more important here is that it being an incretin hormone, and it being a hormone that causes the creation of insulin, means that we need to be careful, because in the evening you need, and no, that's not for diabetic, which is why it's so important to understand this whole thing. The glucagons need to be produced to burn the fats, to burn the stored sugar, to get into the visceral fat and stuff around our bellies, and get your body back into that metabolic function. Is Ozempic doing that? I don't know. I don't believe so. I don't know. Let the evidence come. I believe have nothing to do with that. Let the evidence come and see what is happening with the mechanism of this GLP-1 in the body. The good thing about it is GLP-1. What is good about GLP-1? Well, GLP-1 is just a hormone produced by the body. Again, it's a set of amino acids, a peptide, so that means a protein made by the body when you have enough amino acids. So it's like a pumping it in, not telling you that you yourself is not getting in your right amount of amino acids from the dietary protein, which is a problem that most people do not want to listen to me about. We are eating the meat, we are eating the beans, we are eating the legumes, the soya, the peas, the chunks, whatever you're eating for your dietary protein does not mean you are getting the amino acids from it. And simply put, you are not getting the amino acids because your process has been not spoken about. The process of digestion in the stomach has to be acidic. Most of us who are suffering that do not have an acidic stomach, we are on omeprazole, we are on dalalala, we are on this. I don't want to call it baking soda. We are messing up our stomach acidity, and we are hoping that once we eat, we get amino acids. That is not true. You eat meat, you eat fish, you eat eggs, you eat soya chunks, wherever you get your source of protein, dietary protein, does not mean you are getting the nutrients which are called amino acids from the protein. It has to be acidified. In my book, which I'm working on, and I hope you could click the link in my bio and buy my book, I am now informing people from my revelations, my personal revelations, my own anecdotal notes, shows that we need to pair foods now with lemon, lime, apple cider vinegar, which is not nothing new, but it is a conscious state of awareness that most people need to hear and at least adhere to. Pair your food with these substances 20 minutes before, 15 minutes before you consume your food. Squeeze the lime into your food, squeeze the lime into your food, squeeze the lime into whatever you're about to drink, because the acidity of the lime would extract the amino acids. it will start denaturing the amino acids. You will start denaturing the protein in the bowl. When you eat it, it would give you some substance to support you in the digestion of the thing. So if you have to go on things like the betainates here and the pepsin, or you need pepsin, at least you know you're starting to support them by giving the body some de-uncoiled or denatured amino acids, denatured protein peptides to cut up. So there would be a chance that you would be getting some amino acids from your dietary protein source. Or else you could be eating and drinking as much as you want, but there is no transfer. Again, solutions like getting yourself, you could click the link in my bio to get some body health amino acids and try it. See how you feel after 30 days. Get a body health 600. Try it. It is pre-digested amino acids. You get to use it, you use it, and see how you feel. You may start realizing that your body starts creating enough amino acids to get all these hormones to get back into the shape. Of course, do not take no advice from me. I'm just saying you could supplement, talk to your doctor about this. But remember, come back and click the link in my bio if you're interested in getting some of this pre-digested amino acid to try to see if you could heal yourself. At the end of the day, amino acids are the building blocks of everything we have been speaking about: insulin and glucagon. Any incretin hormone, it is amino acids you need to create them. So while we are fighting a battle on one side, we need to know that the nutrients to create these very essential peptides has to be present. You might sit and say, "Oh, well, I'm eating protein." You're eating what protein? You eating protein? I eating protein too. The only thing we could guarantee that will pass through the mouth and give you a whole lot into the body is that thing called glucose. Nothing else is guaranteed to pass through the mouth and go into the body because glucose is the most abundant resource and the most needed resource by the body. It is so available and bioavailable that I wish everything could have been like glucose, but it is not. Protein is not like glucose. Protein has to go through a very rigorous chemical modulation process in the stomach, and the pH has to be right to really digest the protein by breaking it down and deaminating it and uncoiling it and then getting the little peptide thing to wake up, which is another protein itself to wake up and cut up this thing into smaller blocks and then go down to another process, get acidified with the bile, get neutralized with the bile and the pancreatic juices and get some more enzymes to help cut up this protein. Fatty acids are another story in itself. Fats to make fatty acids. So when we fast forward, we know we need all these, we need a lot of amino acids. Getting it into the body is another story. Not getting it into the mouth, that's easy. So at the end of the day, the ingredient hormones here that we're looking at will be GLP-1, which is what the Ozempic represents. And we also have a gastric inhibitory polypeptide, which is called GIP, and they both help the gut, they both get stimulated in the gut itself in response to food intake, and they enhance insulin secretion from the pancreas. So these both things help to secrete, they help to push the secretion along of insulin from in the creation. So this is why the semaglutides are important, because the semaglutides are creating GLP-1. More GLP-1s are basically what you're doing because your stomach is weak and you do not have GLP-1 and GIP creating a very good consistent level, and you do not have, well, if you don't have GIP and GLP, you wouldn't have glucagon, you wouldn't have insulin producing because you do not have the underlying properties, which is called amino acids, to make them. And so, taking a Wegovy injection is actually taking some of this pre-made into your skin, which goes into your blood, and it will just be pumping into your blood and going to the beta cells, pancreas side, and say to the pancreas, "Hey, make insulin." Why? I don't know. I don't know. Apparently, when it tells pancreas make insulin, insulin goes into the blood and controls blood sugar levels, better for diabetics, type 2 diabetics. And that's a good thing. Type 2 diabetics is like in the morning, blood sugar high like hell because the glucagon would have gone in the night and start opening some pockets of sugar, releasing it, and I call it the dawn effect. So they release it for the liver to get energy to supply to the body because the liver is responsible for the body in the night. for supplying energy. The liver is the backup generator in the night. The liver don't depend on you eating the sugar in the night. The liver has enough energy for the night. In fact, it has it for 4 5 nights, 3 days and 3 nights. The liver has enough backup in its generator. And so the liver in the night goes into its generator and turn it on. Of course, when it turns it on and it runs, it has to leave enough to last for the morning because the bowel has to start doing some peristalsis in the earlier part of the morning. The kidneys need to do some expelling in the morning. So there is various functions that needs the energy. And so you see yourself with a burst of glucose in the blood as you wake as a diabetic type 2, I think is as you wake diabetics, the blood burst of glucose and the blood sugar levels are high, and give and take, they don't go and do an activity to bring it down. They may insert some, they may take a shot of insulin to control the blood sugar levels. Now the GLP-1, Ozempic and stuff, having it now makes the same thing happen. But this time you are not taking a shot of insulin. You are taking a shot of a hormone that tells the pancreas, create for me insulin, because look at how much blood it has, how much glucose that's just there circulating and nobody's to manage it. And so the pancreas does what the pancreas do. It makes insulin, and rightfully so. But then my question is, it makes insulin. They never would say to you that there is another hormone. So there is insulin. Let me get the name of this hormone. There is a third hormone, glucagon. There is a third hormone that helps with the management of the availability of the interworking between this hormone. There's a third hormone. This is made by the pancreas too. This hormone is more like the manager of insulin and glucagon, and it helps regulate them. So when insulin is there, insulin being a protein, protein cannot last long, cannot be stored, cannot stay around long, right? It would then decompose back into amino acids. That is what happens to protein in the body. They come up, they come back down. They come up together, and then you see they just come back down apart. So it was like a little set of blocks come together. They make this thing called a insulin protein, and then they just dissolve when they do the work and they come down. It's not a long task, but the task requires a little bit of energy, ATP, and it requires the presence of the amino acids to make them. And so the insulin and the glucagon is there doing what they have to do, and at the end of the day, they would be perfectly in charge of the entire process of creating the atmosphere for blood sugar levels control. So let me see what else that I would have picked up that I think is important. So we would have looked at this whole insulin, glucagon, the relationship between these two in facilitating the blood sugar levels. So when the blood sugar levels are low and it does not have any coming in from your mouth to your gut to your hepatic portal vein, the pancreas knows that. So glucagon will be provided, and glucagon will go on unzip fat cells and release insulin. It is stimulated by the liver to release stored glucose, which is called glycogen, into the bloodstream, and it would increase the blood sugar levels. So glucagon will go first to the liver, release that there. Now, when the blood sugar level rise after a meal, that is when the insulin starts coming back to facilitate whatever cells for the same work that glucose is used for. Glucose is really energy. So left or right, we are going in the direction of understanding more and more how this works, and what is in play here is those incretin hormones And these two ingredient hormone, GLP-1 and GIP, are quite interesting to understand because they get released into the gut, and when they get released into the gut, they do send specific signals to the pancreas to tell the pancreas to make insulin, meaning that they are saying, hey, a lot of sugar is coming in, bro. A lot of glucose is coming in. Make insulin to manage that. And that's the point that I am confused about, because if Ozempic and no, that is, let me just back up. Now, if Ozempic and the semaglutides are doing this, then what is it that we have to understand in terms of the power over? I wouldn't. Okay, I eat a meal, so much insulin will be reduced because we're telling the pancreas send across insulin. But these ingredient hormones also do something more. They regulate appetite and they promote the feeling of satiety. So, because they are regulating the appetite, they make you feel that you are fuller, faster, and easier, smaller meals. And they also slow down the movement, the gastric emptying, the movement of things out of your body. So when I did the lime rice Zimpic 70, I could say there is that same effect from gastric emptying, observable, very well observable. If you do the 15 minutes of lime water, if you do the 15 minutes of um, rice, 15 minutes of warm water, rice, lime, squeeze it into it, and then you drink the water afterwards. I don't bother with the rice. You would quickly observe within the first 3 days that your emptying pattern, that is your bowel movement, becomes quite slower. I must say that. And that could be a good thing because it does make you feel fuller for longer. It also could have some sidelines, for example. Well, I don't know if it would have sidelines issues, but it is a good thing. It's slower. It's slow. And that is good from a point of view of you feeling fuller, so you wouldn't be snacking, you wouldn't be eating so much meals. But when you eat, make sure that you eat a proper meal. Good amino acids from the protein source with the proper fats. Make sure you get the omega 3, EPA, DHA. Make sure you get your fatty acids, your good clarified butter, your olive oil, whatever you could use. Get those things. Yes, get your fruits, your veggies, and those things. Stay low on your carbs or eat the healthy whole food carbs, the vegetables and stuff like that. So the thing with the glucagon like peptide one, the Ozempic, is while it is stimulating insulin to become more effective in grabbing onto the sugar, it is also suppressing your appetite. It is delaying your gastric emptying. So it suppresses, makes your brain feel like you're hungry. And when the brain feel like you're hungry, we have to start asking where is the brain getting the glucose from? Maybe that's the trick in the point here, that the brain is saying, I need glucose, but I'm not hungry. So the liver would start releasing the glucose because the glucagon could come up and release the glucose into the blood from the liver. So the three main things here: it promotes satiety and it helps glucose uptake by the cell to be good. So if you have to be on a protocol for this, muscle cells quite important for glucose consumption. So increasing your muscle mass, working out, protein and fats in your diet has to take main place. Your digestive process, make sure that your stomach is, get your focus back on your stomach to make sure that the digestive process is back up and functioning, and that would help you go a long way overall. The whole test with rising peak or oats in peak, I've not done the oats in peak yet, that is oats, rice, water. I have done the rice in peak, which is rice, lemon, squeeze with the lime in the morning with a little warm water, cover the rice, squeeze the lime, leave it there to sit 15 minutes, strain that out and drink it. I have done this And I could tell you there is this gastric delay. The suppression of appetite, very clear. The circumtine, very clear. The delayed gastric emptying, very clear. And the promotion of satiety, feeling full, very, very effective. So the rice water or the lime by itself, I don't know. But that lime rice water mixture does provide a certain semblance of this particular evidence. And that is why I think the people on TikTok would have come up with the idea of it being rising peak. So this is not for fun, this is just my notes, this is things that I've done, this is my observation. Anecdotal as it may be, someone may find it very useful there to direct them in helping their own self and following up on these things to help their lives and have a better experience in this life in whenever 2020, 2024, whenever I watch this video. Thank you for viewing. Have a very good day and we see you on the next one.